Today I'm lucky enough to have a business owner, Gary Arenson, in studio with me today. Thank you for taking the time out to come and speak to me about comfort in the workspace.
Nice to be here.
I want to start off, when we started the business, one of the things, and probably furthest from my mind, was the seat that employees sat in when behind their desk, working 8 hours or maybe even longer a day. One of the things that we were building, and I think it comes off the back of a video and a podcast that I have recently posted on culture within the business. And we always focus on employee well-being, like their mental state. And, you know, have we planned enough social events in the calendar to ensure that those employees are looked after from a social perspective, and then obviously their mental well-being. But
Right.
never did I think sitting in a chair was as important as it actually is. And when the business has grown in leaps and bounds over the years, and we had to take up new office space. And in doing that, I think that's when our paths crossed. And you made me realize how important it was to find a chair that suited the employees and how important that was to them. And I do want to just touch on that today and get some of your views about the comfort of sitting behind your desk and the importance of that. There were two aspects when we did that move and building new office space. One was just the incredible nature of what a chair could do to a boardroom, and it could uplift that. I think at the time you gave me every single color in the Harvey chairs, so I could actually pick which color I wanted.
Right.
Sourcing fabrics, and it was quite a journey for me to do that.
Mainly because we disagreed what was navy and what was black. Yeah.
That was hilarious. So like, is this blue? Is it black? It was similar to, you know, that thing that was on social media about the dress and whether it was black or blue or what color you saw. And I think
we had that with chairs,
And that was an interesting experience. But what I found in that is that you were so responsive to my needs. And when I said, I don't agree with the black that we have, you managed to just get someone to come and bring a whole host of fabrics and put it into the sun. This is actually black. We can use this, or this is blue. What that then did, obviously looking at the aesthetic of the building, and it just enhanced the level of professionalism that we have in that space. But one of the things that I think we want to talk about today is around ensuring that employees are comfortable when they're behind their desk.
Right.
They spend a lot of time sitting in a chair. And we've got some examples that we'll talk about where you guys have uniquely come in and assisted employees who have issues and how you've then enhanced their experience. But I think, Gary, if you can tell me, what is your view on comfort in a workplace? Why is it important? I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think what you've been saying reminds me of something that really was an insight that I got many years ago when I was still in clinical physiotherapy practice, which was my original training. And that is that, you know, in that environment, you expect to see people coming in from the sports field. They expect to see rugby injuries, etc.
Yeah.
And when I was in that environment, I was seeing people every day, the majority of whom were coming in with work injuries, i.e. people coming in because they were sitting in front of their workstations all day.
Yeah.
And it just made me realize the incredible impact that incorrect seating can have on the body. So that's the one, you know, I realized that very acutely in that environment. And the other thing that I realized is that people make the assumption that their staff, their teams, are comfortable as the day progresses. And what we have found through years and thousands of interviews and questionnaires is that that is an incorrect assumption. The vast majority of people get more uncomfortable as the day progresses. Now, there is then an understanding that people get less efficient as the day progresses unless you undo that trend. So that's where we
stops at the coffee station to like just be on the move.
To be physically comfortable. So it then became a question of taking that medical training and taking a step back and saying, okay, well, let's look at seating and what's available and how that's impacting. And then taking a fairly unique approach, I think, to that in terms of saying, okay, well, let's make sure that we have the right product for people, but also to make sure that people have the knowledge of how best to utilize that product, so that, if you're fitting out 100 people, so to make sure that all 100 people are comfortable.
I think, can you talk through that? Because one of the things is that you didn't just supply the chairs. You didn't just say, here, 100 chairs, happy, carry on, and, everything would be okay. Do you want to just talk us through that experience and what service you actually do bring to the table?
Sure. So I think it's really about ensuring that people know how to utilize the chair that they're sitting on. It's fascinating to me when I first got into the industry, a few decades ago now, that people would often utilize a chair exactly the way that it arrived.
Yeah.
I remember arriving at a large installation, and people were literally, the chairs were made into the chairs were in an extreme forward position, and everyone was sitting like this.
Yeah.
Because no one had manipulated the chair in any way. That's an extreme example. But people are not necessarily familiar with how the chair works. So what we do is we have a team of physiotherapists who will spend time with every user to say, okay, are you comfortable with how the chair works itself? And then as a second step, how does the chair fit in relation to your workstation? The fact that you're 5'5" or you're 6'5", those variables have to be changed slightly. So by the time I walk away from you, you're optimally set up and comfortable.
And I think there were instances where we had brought in chairs and people were either really short and needed a different chair, and we were able to then, remedy it on the spot.
I think good design, it's easy to create a chair that's really, really comfortable for a person of a very particular shape and size and weight. I think good design is one that really suits the broadest possible percentile of people, and that's what our product aims to do. So, it's about saying, can we get everybody comfortable? But there are always exceptions, and for those people, absolutely, we need to address it either by utilizing just knowledge, or perhaps it's an accessory product like a footrest or something like for a short person, a footrest becomes an imperative. Or is it an exceptional case and we have to perhaps change the product slightly or change the chair model completely, for that matter?
One of the things that happened is we had an employee who had neck surgery. Obviously working from home for 2 weeks until she was fully recovered to come into the office. One of the things that you and your team then had done is that when she did come into the office, you were there with your team to see, well, what chair is best suited for her. So you actually then brought in 2 different chairs. She was able to then see which one she was more comfortable in. And then your head physiotherapist was there to say, well, actually, this is probably better suited for her. What that then resulted in is that she was comfortable within her workspace while she's, recovering from this injury and the surgery. And then she was able to then source a chair for her home office.
And I think when someone's gone through that experience, the workplace becomes a tense environment for them, a threatening environment almost. Yeah. So what you want to be able to do is make that user-friendly again. So it's absolutely imperative that they then feel that environment is safe for them again to re-engage with.
Yeah.
So then it's about choosing the optimal product and showing them how best to use that product. And it's interesting that case that you mentioned was a neck issue. And very often it's just worth noting, often people that have cervical and neck pain think that they need a chair with a headrest, they need it. And it's fascinating because more often than not, that's not the case. What becomes crucial is you then look at their workstation and see how they're positioned. Are they looking up at a monitor that's too high or too low, etc., or rotated constantly? It's all of the variables that are on the work surface that impact the neck as more often than just having a high back chair. So it's all of these moving parts that we take cognizance of, so that by the time we've left that environment, that person feels safe and comfortable in that environment.
I think for me, the biggest thing is we're not experts of how to sit and how to position yourselves. And it's great to just have that partnership with you to bring someone in to assist people in that space.
Yeah, and it's about having fun. Ultimately, I think business is about people. It's about people doing business with people, regardless of the product. And it allows us to engage, not just to send the product, but to engage with the people that are using the product.
So in my Joburg office, I used to sit in a chair that looked and felt like the rest of the aesthetic within that building. And I was recently in Joburg and I sat back in that chair. It was the worst chair that I've ever sat in, to the point where the person who's now taken over my office, I said, Clay, how are you sitting in this chair? We have to get you new chairs. That is something that we can do. Because I think when you're sitting in a bad chair, you actually don't realize it until, in our office here, I sit in an ergotherapy chair. It's incredible. And then now just going back to the chair that I used to sit in, and it's a no-brainer that we have to change that.
Yeah. It's a little bit like, I think, like being an athlete with poor nutrition. Like you don't realize the differential in performance until you've made that change.
Yeah.
And that's what sitting comfortably at a workstation actually
is all about.
Turns out. Yeah, absolutely. Turns out to be.
So I think for me, the main thing is that companies generally don't focus on comfort in a workplace. Maybe their metrics are very different. And I think it's such an important metric to cover, to say, are my employees happy because they are sitting behind their laptop for a long period of the day? And we're obviously expanding and we're taking up new space. Are there any products in the market that are coming up that can excite me about, bringing into that new space? Yeah. If you want to just talk me through that.
Sure. There's some, I think a trend in the office furniture space that has been for the last number of years is that the lines between what's a corporate look and what's a residential homey look have blurred. So corporate office fit-outs have become much softer, much more design orientated.
Yeah.
And we've had to follow suit, which is fun. So you'll notice that new product is becoming a lot more colorful, a lot of fabric. And
some of that color was too extreme for me. The orange and the pinks, just if you know me, I'm very much black, gray, blue.
but what you can notice is how much of a canvas the chair can become to create fabric and color and brand within an office space. So I think that's a trend that's coming in. And also, the ergonomics used to be defined as everything moves. Every single aspect of the chair has to move backwards, forwards, in and out, etc. And that's nice, but it also creates a product that's very difficult and cumbersome to utilize. So ergonomics is getting simpler, and it's about having chairs that are extremely well designed and almost need very little adjustment. When you, other than the few basic principles that we still need to show people to ensure super comfort. So look forward to showing you those trends.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to, maybe we agree on what the fabric color looks like.
It's red and orange for sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That will be, cool. Yeah, that will definitely not sit well with me. But I'm very happy to, jump into that when the time is right. But again, Gary, thank you so much for coming in, having the conversation with me. I think it's important that people pay attention to this. And thanks.
Thank you. It's been fantastic being part of your growth. Thank you.
Awesome.